Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and 8, the fourth sermon in our series. We've divided Ecclesiastes into five sermons. The first one was Solomon's story, and it actually introduced four problems and four themes. Uh, the second sermon was the seasons of life, and the first of those problems, or the first of those themes, was that there's a monotony to life. The third sermon was enjoying the journey. It gave us the second problem, dealt with that had been introduced. There's an emptiness in wisdom. We're coming now to the fourth sermon. I've entitled it "What You Want in Life." And we're going to see that there's a futility in both wealth and power. And next time we'll be seeing the fifth sermon, invest in your life, and the problem there is that there's a certainty of death. But that's for next time. Right now we're coming to the fourth sermon. What I want to do is back up to the end of chapter 6, starting in verse 9. What the eyes see is better than what the soul desires. That's already introducing the next theme. This too is futility and a striving after the wind. Notice that term better. That's our old friend, the Hebrew word tov. So it's good or it's better. I'm going to go with better. Um, this introduces the new focus that's going to be picked up, the focus of what do you want in life? What are you looking for? And I already noted last time that the Masoretic text places the next three verses through their markings as the pivotal point in this section of the entire book. So we're about to see a pivot. We're about to see a change, at least according to the Masoretic, and I think they might be right, which is why I had the sermons arranged a bit differently, and I came back and looked, especially at what they had to say, and I said I think I'll listen to them. Maybe they've got a better handle on the passage than I do. So verse 10, whatever exists has already been named, and it is known what man is. For he cannot dispute with him. Notice the he cannot dispute with him. Who's disputing? Uh, you've got man on the one hand, and you've got somebody that man can't dispute with. I think that's God here that's being referenced. With him who is stronger than he is, for there are many words which increase futility. What then is the advantage to a man? So it's asking the question, what are you looking for? What is it you want? And remember, there's somebody bigger than you that's around that controls everything. Verse 12, for who knows what is good for a man, or and remember our term tov there can mean good or better, and take your pick. I'm game either way. But try each one on for size as you read it. So who knows what is good or better for a man during his lifetime, during the few years of his futile life. Remember that our life is limited. That's going to be a future theme. We're picking up that on that even now. He, that is man, will spend them like a shadow, for who can tell a man what will be after him under the sun? So it's asking what is good or what is better in life. That's verse 12. And when we come now to the next chapter, we're going to see things that are better in life, good in life, better in life. And that's where we're headed next. So, sermon number 4, what you want in life or finding fulfillment in what you have. That's the better way to go. So chapter 7, verse 1, a good name is better than a good ointment. That's our friend Tove, better or good. But notice we've already got a good name and better than a good ointment. And as we read that first line, a good name is better than a good ointment, that's a line, at least the idea is right out of the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 1. A good name is to be more desired than great wealth. And then it goes on, favor is better than silver and gold. A good name is a good thing to have. You can always get money getting a good reputation. And remember, that was an honor and shame culture in which they lived, in which they are community oriented. Sometimes we lose sight of that, but they hadn't lost sight of that. And then notice the next line, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. Again, Tov, it's good, better. I think better fits better. Excuse the pun. And the point here is not that it's better to be dead necessarily, except that one is potential and the other is actual, especially as it relates to your good name. You see, you never know how it's going to turn out. And so, what we have here, when we say the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth, with regards to that good name and with regard to what is potential versus what is actual. When you're born, you don't know how it's going to turn out. But when you die, when you've come to the end, you can see how it's turned out, and hopefully it's been good. Hopefully you have that good name, and uh, and it can't go away. I've made the comment. I teach a class on a couple classes on history, and with regard to United States presidents, if you want to have a really good reputation going out, die in office. I'm not saying that's commendable to die in office, but if you notice the people that have been assassinated in office or somehow died in office, usually people don't see a lot of bad things about them. Just an interesting observation. Verse 2, it's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. Why? Because you're going to end up there eventually. You might as well be ready for it, because that is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. Now, the dead, the dead can't take it to heart. That's already, it's past them. But it's good to be aware of your mortality, and it's good to come to the end, especially if you can do it vicariously through somebody else's death. Come to the end of life and see that and say, maybe I ought to think about any mid-course corrections now. It reminds me of the book that Stephen Covey wrote many years ago, where he urges his readers, imagine attending your funeral. And let me just say, if you've attended a funeral, probably it crossed your mind somewhere at the point you're going to die too. And so he urges his readers, imagine your funeral and imagine you're standing there at your gravestone and what they're going to write on the stone and what you would like to see them write, you know, hopefully good things. And then he says, now, how are you living? So that's what will be your legacy. I think that was a good exercise. And I think that the preacher is doing the same thing here in chapter 7, verse 2. Verse 3, sorrow is better than laughter. For when a face is sad, a heart may be happy. Sometimes it's good to get serious about your life, for a bit at least, than just to laugh your way all through life and then cry at the end. So notice, for when a face is sad, you can end up getting happy. You can be happy on the inside. And again, that's yeah, yatov. That's actually our same, maybe happy, maybe good. It's our same term, better and good. It's a version of that. It's a, what do you call it? The verbal form of that. Um, Notice the New English translation rendered it, sorrow is better than laughter because sober reflection is, and notice how they captured the good part, is good for the heart. So in verse 3, the first part of the line, we have sorrow, and then there's a face that's sad, and then the corresponding part is laughter. Sorrow can lead to good, not so much. And notice verse 4, the mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. So that I have noticed the mind of the wise versus the mind of the fool. The wise is in the house of mourning. The fool, he's in the house of pleasure. It's all about laughter. It's all about having fun. It's okay to have fun, but if your life is all about that, you might be setting yourself up for a nasty fall. Verse 5, it is better to listen to the rebuke of a wise man. It's never pleasant to get rebuked, but sometimes you need it. And if you need it, it's good to listen than for one to listen to the song of fools. So better to have the rebuke of a wise man than the song of fools, verse 6. For as the crackling of thorn bushes under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool, and this too is futility. Um, so you don't want to just entertain yourself to death. Nothing wrong with entertainment, in moderation, but you do it to death, and you're the one dying at the end. So notice the contrast that we've had, sorrow and a face that's sad versus laughter. That was verse 3. Verse 4, the house of mourning versus the house of pleasure. And now we're going to come to verse 5, the rebuke of a wise man versus the song. Verse 7, for oppression makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Now we're changing a little bit. We've been talking about wise and fool, and those are still here. But there's a new issue that is being raised, and it's the issue of oppression. Notice oppression, and in this case, a bribe, which might correspond to that oppression. So notice we had the rebuke of, down to verse 5, the rebuke of a wise man versus the song of the fools. Now we see that wise man in verse 6, but a bribe can push him over and make him a fool. So the oppression can hit into that. Greed can hit into that, and money can sometimes turn a person from wisdom to foolishness, especially when he's doing something he shouldn't ought to be doing. Verse 8, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit is better than haughtiness of spirit. So notice you have the end of a matter, it's better than the beginning of a matter. Why? Because you know how it's going to turn out. I can see it's no longer potential, now it's actual. Now I can evaluate properly. And then notice the patience of spirit that is better. So patience is better than pride, than haughtiness of spirit. That is pride. That's just the way things are. Pride can lead you to foolishness. Patience is a good quality. Verse 9, do not be eager in your heart to be angry. So anger doesn't go with patience. Anger goes with pride. That's that better than part. Do not be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. Verse 10, do not say, why is it that the former days were better than these? And now think about this. How often have you heard people talk about the good old days? And then he completes the idea, for it is not from wisdom that you ask about this. So the good old days, and I used to tell my firefighters back, sometimes they'd be complaining about this, that, and the other, and I'd say, hey guys, these are going to be the good old days that you're going to be longing for in the future. So why don't you enjoy them now? And notice it's not for wisdom that you ask about this. That perspective that you can lose sometimes in glorifying the good old days, or maybe not enjoying them when you're in them. Verse 11, wisdom along with an inheritance is good, tov, or better, we could say, and an advantage to those who see the sun. Remember, we've been talking about life under the sun. So that's just people, people that are still above the ground instead of under it. Verse 12, for wisdom is protection just as money is protection. Now notice, wisdom along with an inheritance is good. So wisdom plus inheritance equals good. But then wisdom is protection just as money is protection. Um, Now think about how money is protection, and we don't really, um, especially if we live in a culture where we expect equality, equality before the law. That's great. That's the way it should be. I'm not sure that's the way it always is. Um, but there's another sort of protection besides money, and that's wisdom. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the lives of its possessors. So notice wisdom protects, and an inheritance, that is the money protects. But the advantage of knowledge, you might lose your money. Hopefully you're not gonna lose what you know, is that wisdom protects the lives of its possessors. Um, you can have possessions and lose them through foolishness. If you have possessions and wisdom, chances are you're going to keep what you have. So wisdom does a better job of protecting than money does, because foolishness can lose the money. Verse 13, consider the work of God, for who is able to straighten what he has bent? Now, we've been talking about wisdom and money and power and things like that, but let me just say, God is a lot more powerful. God is a lot more wise. And so, in verse 14, in the day of prosperity, that's our old friend Tov. I don't think we would translate it better, but in the day of good, and I think prosperity is the idea of what kind of goodness this is talking about. In the day of prosperity, be happy. But in the day of adversity, and you may face one and then the other, but in the day of adversity, consider God has made the one as well as the other. God's the one in charge of all of it, so that man will not discover anything that will be after him. Now, the warning there is that God knows what's going to happen. He's bringing about what's going to happen, and you don't. And even when it takes place, you might not see all of the things involved. Think of the story of Job, who was a wealthy man and enjoying all these things, and then something happened that was completely out of his control. He didn't know why. We're given a little glimpse into the workings of the universe for that behind the scenes in that book. But Job didn't have a clue, and he was going through all these things. And to the best of our knowledge, as we read the book, he never really finds out. We find out as the reader. And it's evidently, whoever wrote the book, I don't know that Job wrote it, but whoever wrote the book somehow found out, was given a glimpse into those behind the scene things in heaven. But not so Job. And notice, man will not discover anything that will be after him. You don't have a crystal ball. Oh, you don't know what's going to happen. Yes, let me just say, I do believe Jesus is coming. I get that from the scriptures. But as far as what's going to happen to me and things in this under the sun life, I don't know what's going to happen. It's all unexpected. Um, Chapter 6, verse 12 had asked the same question to get us into this, had asked the question, who can tell a man what will be after him under the sun? The answer is, well, God can if he wants, but he doesn't always. In fact, he rarely tells me what he's going to do. He hardly ever checks in with me. So verse 13, you cannot straighten what God has bent. Verse 14, when things are good, enjoy it. The rest of verse 14, when things are bad, make the most of it. Weather it if you have to. Deal with it, because it's good things are going to happen, and maybe bad things are going to happen too. And God is in control of both. God made both of them happen. We saw that in the book of Job. We see it here in Ecclesiastes as well. So don't try to figure it out. Just roll with it. Verse 15, I have seen everything during my lifetime of futility. That's sort of setting the stage, what we're looking at. The empty times. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wickedness who prolongs his life in his wickedness. Now, that's not the way it ought to be, at least to our thinking. But under the sun, sometimes things happen like that, where somebody's righteous, and you'd think that, well, God's going to take care of him, but instead he perishes in his righteousness. And there's somebody who's doing bad, and instead of receiving bad for it, he seems to live a long time. So you've got the righteous man that perishes in his righteousness. There's the wicked man who prolongs his life in his wickedness. Uh, Justice doesn't always happen in this life. Now, remember, we're looking at the under the sun perspective. We're looking at things that happen in this life. We're not talking about life after death yet. That's going to be hinted out, but that's not here yet. Verse 16, do not be excessively righteous and do not be overly wise. And this brings up a question. You say, I thought it was good to be right, very righteous. I thought it was good to be overly wise. Why should you ruin yourself? And I think there's a warning here. Is it against extremism? Maybe. Is it a warning against self-righteousness? I think that's probably more the case. Notice the flip side, verse 17, do not be excessively wicked and do not be a fool. Notice doesn't say overly a fool, just says don't be a fool at all. A little foolishness goes a long way. Why should you die before your time? Verse 18, it is good that you grasp one thing and also not let go of the other. So notice, have some balance in your life. On the one hand, don't make it all about one thing. For the one who fears God comes forth with both of them. So notice, it's good or better that you grasp one thing, but of all things, make sure you keep God in the equation. Fearing God, that always serves you well. Notice, you can't fear God too much. I think that's the idea. Let God be God, and you're not. And as long as you keep Him in mind, then don't worry so much about, am I righteous enough? Am I wise enough? Just honor the Lord, and He will handle the heavier things. Verse 19, wisdom strengthens a wise man more than 10 rulers who were in a city. So wisdom's good. We're not downing wisdom. Verse 20, indeed, there is not a righteous man on earth who continually does good and who never sins. Now, what we have here is a basic principle. We see it in the New Testament. We see it here as well. The fallenness of man. And we see it here with regards to righteousness, that because we live in a fallen world and we ourselves are fallen, that we all have sinned. I like the way Paul says it in Romans chapter 3. We have all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That's not just a New Testament teaching, that's an Old Testament teaching as well. Verse 21, also do not take seriously all the words which are spoken, so that you will not hear your servant cursing you. Notice the fallenness of man. It deals with words too, things that you say. Sometimes it's your servant cursing you, and so if you overhear your servant, somebody under your authority, and they're miffed, they're upset, and they're muttering under your breath, don't take that to heart too much. Verse 22, for you also have realized that you likewise have many times cursed others. So be forgiving because you want to be forgiven yourself. You have cursed others. You have spoken evil of others. Maybe it wasn't quite in a curse, but maybe you muttered a bit on the highway. Somebody cut you off, and so give room to others. Don't take so seriously what they have said when it's not very nice to you. So in verse 23, I tested all this with wisdom, and I said, I will be wise. And so saying you're wise is going to be a good thing. But it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. It's another thing to say you're going to be righteous, another thing to do it. It's another thing to say, I'm going to guard my words. But sometimes your tongue has a life of its own, all tracing back to our fallenness. Notice it was far from me. What has been is remote and exceedingly mysterious. Who can discover it? Leave room for the mystery of God, because you are fallen in your righteousness, words, and wisdom, and don't think you're going to arrive at all the knowledge there is. God is bigger than you, and the way his world works is bigger than your understanding. Verse 25, we're still on that idea of the fallenness of man, but it's going to turn in a slightly different direction in the next few verses. I directed my mind to know, to investigate, and to seek wisdom and an explanation, to know the evil of folly and the foolishness of madness. And where can I find this? And I discovered more bitter than death. Here's what I discovered. The woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are chains. One who is pleasing to God will escape from her, but the sinner will be captured by her. Now remember who's writing this, at least who we're supposed to put in the realm of the author, Solomon. And if it's one thing that Solomon had experience with, it's with women. When I look at the Song of Songs, that was a good story. But when I look at Solomon's own personal life in his later years, that was not a good story. There's certain women that he married became, snares and nets. Verse 27, behold, I have discovered this, says the preacher. Notice this is the first time we've seen the preacher mentioned in quite a while. He was mentioned back in chapter 1. He'll be mentioned again in chapter 12, but we haven't seen him by name, at least by title. Behold, I have discovered this, says the preacher, adding one thing to another to find an explanation, which I am still seeking and have not found. I have found, and notice he's on a voyage of discovery, and he's been looking for things, and there's things that he hasn't found. I have found one man among 1,000. One man to do what? I mean, there's lots of people out there, but one man of wisdom, one man of integrity, one man, can I say it this way, in whom he believes. When I think about this, we Christians have one man of integrity, one man in whom we believe. And let me just say, it's not me, and it's not you. There is one man among 1,000. But remember how we were looking at the problem of women before? We haven't gotten away from that. But I have not found a woman among all these. Now, that's not saying, men are good and and women are bad. He hasn't found one man. Well, yes, there is one. A hint here. I'm not sure who he has in mind. I know who I have in mind when I look at that, but not a woman among all these. Behold, I have found only this, that God made men upright, but they have sought out many devices. We are fallen, and we need that one man. We need that one man who came and died in our place, and who sets us free, and who changes us from the inside out. Could it be that there's a hint of the gospel here in these verses? Well, chapter 8, verse 1, who is like the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a matter? And notice there's a question, it's not answered. A man's wisdom illumines him and causes his stern face to beam. So there is a place for wisdom to answer these questions, but they're still questions. Verse 2, I say, keep the command of the king. And now we're going to go from the money theme and the wisdom theme to the king theme, the one in authority. Keep in the command of the king because of the oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave him. I don't think I don't think the him is God. I think the him is the king. Do not join in an evil matter, for he will do whatever he pleases. Now, of course, God does whatever he pleases, but kings do too. Kings are, well, they're kings, and they act kingly, and that might be a good thing. Although think of Solomon's father, David. His acting kingly was not always a good thing. Sometimes it was a bad thing, but it was certainly a thing. It was always there. So he will do whatever he pleases. I think we're still talking about the king. Verse 4, since the word of the king, still talking about the king here, is authoritative, who will say to him, for what are you doing? You kings don't answer to anybody. At least the ancient kings did not. He who keeps a royal command, and our translators added the word royal, but I think they did that because it's the command of the king in context. Uh, he who keeps a royal command experiences no trouble, for a wise heart knows the proper time and procedure. When the king speaks, you're safer to just go with it, roll with it. Verse 6, for there is a proper time and procedure for every delight, though a man's trouble is heavy upon him. 7, if no one knows what will happen, who can tell him when it will happen? What's the right time for things? No man has authority, and we're looking at the example of the king. Even kings can't restrain the wind. No man has authority to restrain the wind with the wind, or authority over the day of death. God's in control of those things. So there's things the king can do, but there's things that only God can do. And there is no discharge in the time of war, and evil will not deliver those who practice it. God is the ultimate authority. Yes, there's the king. Yes, that's the authority you have to deal with on a regular basis. But over him is God himself. Verse 9, all this I have seen and applied my mind to every deed that has been done under the sun, wherein a man has exercised authority. But notice here it's exercised authority over another man to his hurt. So it's one thing to watch the king exercising authority. That's what kings do. That's what people in authority do. It's another thing when they do that to hurt others. And remember that the story of Solomon starts with the story of David, who exercised authority to somebody's hurt. Verse 10, so then I have seen the wicked buried, and those who used to go in and out from the holy city, the holy place, and they are soon forgotten in the city where they did this. This too is futility. So you look at the wicked, and their wickedness did not save them. Ultimately, they're gone and forgotten. They are soon forgotten in the city where they did this, and that's emptiness. That's futility. Verse 11, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed quickly, whether it's a king or whether it's anybody else. I think this is more general, although true of kings as well. Therefore, the hearts of the sons of men among them are given fully to do evil. People think, hey, I got away with it. Remember, that was David's story. David's story is he committed adultery, and then he arranged a murder, and he thought at the end of it, I got away with it. But that's not the way it turned out. Yeah, he didn't get away with it. And because people think they get away with it, then notice the sons of men among them are given fully to do evil. They think that crime will pay. What pays, not the way they think. Remember, the wages of sin, it pays. Yes, the wages of sin is death. That's the negative. Verse 12. Although a sinner does evil 100 times and may lengthen his life, still I know that it will be well, tov, or it will be better, good, well, better, any one of those, for those who fear God. Big idea here is, yes, kings, they operate kingly. Sometimes they do bad things. Sometimes people do bad things. But it's better to fear God. Big idea. Um, and notice, for those who fear God, who fear Him openly. In other words, you don't have to do that by half measures. Verse 13. But it will not be well for the evil man. Not will be better. It won't be better for the evil man, and he will not lengthen his days like a shadow, because he does not fear God. It really, God is the big issue. It's not my righteousness, because my righteousness really isn't. It's not my wisdom, because my wisdom is quite limited. It's it's how I view God. It is how I reckon myself toward God. It's my relationship with God. And in this case, taking God seriously, those who fear God versus those who do not. Verse 14, there is futility, emptiness, Havel, which is done on the earth. That is, there are righteous men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. So that there are righteous people. Sometimes righteous people die. Sometimes righteous people are living righteously and bad things happen to them. On the other hand, there are evil men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I say this too is futility. Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. That's just what happens. Verse 15, so I commended pleasure, for there is nothing good, remember Tov, better, for a man under the sun, except to eat and to drink and to be merry. Enjoy those things that God has given, and this will stand by him in his toils throughout the days of his life, which God has given him under the sun. So enjoy that which God has given. If life is good, enjoy it. If life is bad, endure it. Recognize that God, fear the Lord, and recognize that He gives good things, and bad things too come your way. And it's not that God is out of control. God gives all things under the sun. Verse 16, when I gave my heart to know wisdom and to see the task which has been done on earth, even though one should never sleep day or night. In other words, don't abandon all hope and go into a fit of depression and just, say, that's it, I'm going to bed and I'm not going to get up. Verse 17, I saw every work of God, and I concluded that man cannot discover the work which has been done under the sun. I looked at it all and I thought, with all my wisdom, with all my thinking, with all my reflection, I'm still a little bit at a loss for how it all works out. Man cannot discover the work which has been done under the sun. Even though man should seek laboriously, he will not discover. And though the wise man should say, I know, he cannot discover. So here's the point. Here's the point that under the sun, this side of heaven, that the books don't always balance. And on the one hand, make the best of what God has given. If those are good things, enjoy it. If those are bad things, endure it. But leave room for the mystery of how God works, because you're not going to figure it all out under the sun. Closing, we've been looking at the fourth sermon. We entitled it What You Want in Life, and we've been all through different aspects of life, that there is futility in wealth and in power. We looked at kings, we looked at power, we looked at wealth, we looked at a number of other things. That the end of the story isn't here yet, that wisdom is better than money or power, but man sees life as a struggle, but God gave life to be enjoyed. So as you can, live in a wise manner, enjoy the journey, enjoy what God has given, but leave room for the mystery because you haven't figured it all out yet. That is in God's hands.